When we think of the pinnacle of human knowledge, we think of these names. Oxford, founded in 1096. The University of Paris, 1150. Harvard, 1636. For centuries, the Western world has been taught that the concept of a higher education started here. But what if I told you that over 600 years before Oxford even held its first class, there was a city of stone and brick in the jungles of India that made these institutions look like elementary schools? A place where 10,000 students, from Turkey to Japan, lived, studied, and debated the secrets of the universe. A place where the hard drive of the ancient world, a library 9 stories tall, was burned to the ground in a tragedy that arguably set human progress back by 500 years. Welcome to Nalanda, the lost superpower of ancient knowledge. And today, we are going to investigate how this Oxford of the East changed the world and why it was wiped from history. To understand Nalanda, we have to travel back to the 5th century, the golden age of India. While Europe was fracturing after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Gupta dynasty in India was building something the world had never seen. In 427 CE, Emperor Kumaragupta I, a Hindu monarch, founded what many scholars call the world's first truly residential university. It wasn't just a temple, it was a clinical architectural marvel. Excavations have revealed a campus spanning at least 30 acres, though many believe this is just the tip of the iceberg. Nalanda was the world's first international university. It drew the brightest minds from across the globe. Imagine the diversity of this place in 600 CE. You'd hear the sounds of a dozen languages in the hallways, all united by a single goal: the pursuit of truth. There's a common misconception in the West that Nalanda was just a Buddhist monastery where monks sat in silence. The truth is far more radical. Nalanda was surprisingly secular. While it was a center for Mahayana Buddhism, you could study medicine, logic, mathematics, and even alchemy, an early form of chemistry. Students here weren't just learning to pray, they were learning to think. The administration was incredibly democratic for its time. Decisions were made by consensus. No force or coercion was allowed to settle intellectual differences. If even one monk objected to a new rule, it wouldn't pass. This was a laboratory for the human mind, operating with a level of sophistication that wouldn't reach Europe for nearly a millennium. But the real heart of Nalanda was something called the Dharmaganja, the Piety Mart. But locals knew it by a different name: the library. It was composed of 3 massive buildings: the Ocean of Jewels, the Jewel Adorned, and the most legendary of all, Ratnodadi, the Sea of Jewels. This building was 9 stories high. Inside were hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, hand-copied palm leaves containing the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. If you were a scholar in the 7th century and you wanted to know the truth about astronomy or medicine, you had to come here. There was simply no other server on the planet with this much data. We know so much about Nalanda because of the travel vloggers of the ancient world, Chinese pilgrims who risked their lives to get here. The most famous was Xuanzang. He survived a perilous overland journey through the Silk Road just to study here for 2 years. He described a campus that sounds like something out of a fantasy novel: fairy-like turrets and observatories lost in the morning vapors. Another monk, Yi Jing, stayed for 10 years. He recorded the minutiae of daily life, including the 10 great bathing pools where the day began with the ringing of a bell. Through their eyes, we see a university at its absolute peak, an intellectual superpower that seemed invincible. But in the year 1200 CE, the lights went out. An army led by Muhammad Bakhtiar Khalji swept through the region. While some debate the exact details, the archaeological evidence is chilling. When researchers dug into the ruins, they found a thick layer of ashes across the buildings. This wasn't an accident, it was arson. Legend says the library was so vast that it burned for 3 entire months. Think about that. Decades of research in medicine, centuries of astronomical observations, and unique philosophical treaties all turned to smoke. The monks who survived fled to the mountains of Tibet, carrying what few books they could save. To this day, the Dalai Lama refers to himself as a follower of the Nalanda lineage. The brand memory of this university was so strong, it survived for 800 years in exile. For centuries, Nalanda was buried under mounds of earth, forgotten by the world until 19th century explorers like Alexander Cunningham began to dig. But the story doesn't end in the ruins. In 2014, a new Nalanda University was established nearby, an international project supported by nations across Asia to revive that ancient spirit of global learning. Nalanda reminds us that knowledge is fragile. It can take 1,000 years to build a library and only one match to destroy it. But it also shows us that an idea, the idea of a global, borderless pursuit of truth, can never truly be killed. If Nalanda's library hadn't been destroyed, where would humanity be today? Would we have reached the stars centuries earlier? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories of the lost history that shaped our world, hit subscribe.